Okay, so we're going to transition to the next section here. I'm going to be handing things off to Alyson Stone on our reporting center team, and she's going to take us through some exciting developments in our reporting. So Alyson, if you are there, I'm going to ask you to take it away.
Sounds good. Thanks, Keith. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alyson Stone, and I'm the data manager for MEDIC. Today, I'm going to go over some of the updates that we've made to MEDICLink, our abstraction platform, as well as our Tableau reports. So next slide. All right. So for MEDICLink, our abstraction platform, this list of updates here includes things that were made at the end of June, as well as just last week. So I won't read through all of them here, but a couple to note are we added the calculated heart score to the chest pain module abstraction. So now as abstractors are progressing through the chart and answering questions about EKG or history, that will start to populate the calculated heart score at the bottom. We also added in the location field to the EMR visit page. So if your site has multiple satellite locations and those come over with the electronic data feed, that's now available in MEDICLink as well. And then off to the right-hand side, you can see just some of the impact this has had. So it's led to an enhanced ability to analyze supplementary chart-reviewed information, allowed for more real-time data quality check during chart abstraction, and has improved abstraction timeliness and efficiency. Next slide. All right, so for Tableau, again, this is comprehensive of last June and last week. So some of the updates we made were adding in physician name to the physician scorecard because originally it just displayed MPI. And then in addition to that, we added the numerator and denominator to the export for the physician scorecard. So we hope as we're going through and updating all of these Tableau reports that it leads to an improved user experience for all of you and increases the ease of the report navigation. It has also led to enhanced analysis capabilities and more data visualization opportunities, as well as provided more key information right at your fingertips. Next slide. All right, so these are the new Tableau reports that were released just last week. So we're going to go through them in a little more detail in the next slides. For an overview, that top left box in gray, we have 3 reports that were released for all measures. So we have ranking charts, case summary reports, and the site performance dashboard. For head injury, PE, and chest x-ray, we added the ordering provider filter to the case list. For both adult and peds head injury, we added in the report about GCS and PCS documentation from the EMR. Then for sampled asthma, we added in 5 different reports, some related to steroids and some related to admit without certain treatment, which we'll get into in a little bit. And then for sample chest pain, we added in 2 reports, one about heart score documentation from the EMR and the other about intended disposition. So in the next slides, it's really just to give you a brief overview and get you guys familiar with what you can expect the next time you log into the Tableau reports. So this first one here for the ranking charts, again, this is available for all measures. The one that's displayed here is for adult head injury appropriateness. So when you log in, you'll be able to see your site is labeled. So maybe you're that red dot in the middle and it will say your site name. All other sites will just have a star to represent that anonymity. If you have access to multiple sites, like if you're part of the Beaumont system, then you'll see all 4 Beaumont sites listed here. So the goal is to be able to see where your performance falls within the collaborative, and then also how you're performing relative to the target and the collaborative average, which are the 2 horizontal lines there. Next slide. All right, so these are the case summary reports, again, available for all measures. The one we have displayed here is for PE. So we show this graphically over time as well as in table format. And the goal here is to give you a breakdown of the different numbers of cases and how they fell into cohorts. So that blue line at the top and the first line of the table represent all PE cases. And then the following one, the orange line, represents correct cohort, followed by eligible cases, which is the yellow line, and it's very, very close to the orange line, so that's why it's a little difficult to see here. And then finally, that's followed by the acute PE diagnosis for the gray line. So again, you can log in and see how this looks for head injury, chest pain, etc. All right, next one. All right, so the site performance dashboard, we developed this to try to give you guys just one easy to access place to see how you're doing on all measures at once. So if you take a look at maybe that second one there for adult minor head injury, CT appropriateness, you can see that first column is your selected site. So if you have access to multiple sites, you can select just one of them at a time to compare. And then that's followed by the average of the user's site. So it's easy to use Beaumont as an example. If you have access to all 4 Beaumont sites, then that's going to be representative of the Beaumont average. Next, that's followed by the MEDIC average and then the target. So all graphs follow the same format here. The only difference is that first one for asthma doesn't have a target listed because there's no formal MEDIC target for asthma at the moment. All right, next slide. Okay, here we have the ordering provider report. So we added in the ordering provider name and MPI to the case list for head injury, PE, and chest x-ray. They weren't added into initiatives such as chest pain and asthma because for those initiatives, we aren't looking at any orders or scans, so it's not applicable to add them in there. When you go in here, of course, more data will be populated. You'll see your facility name, visit date, attending, ordering provider, etc. In the bottom right, you can filter on a certain attending or a certain ordering provider. So now if you want to see how a certain ordering provider's behavior is over time with their ordering patterns, you can filter on that and you kind of see how they're doing as well. So the ordering provider could, of course, be the same as the attending, or it could also be the APP or the resident. One thing to keep in mind here is that almost all sites send us data for the ordering provider, but there are a few here and there that aren't able to send it at this time. So if it looks blank and you have a question, feel free to reach out to us and we can work through that. Next slide. All right, so this is the report that we added to head injury. So this is available for both adult and peds head injury. And so the top graph is showing the percent of complete adult head injury cases where the GCS or PCS value was recorded in the EMR. So the thought here is that we want to increase this graph over time. However, the table below is the inverse of that. So you can see the word not is in red. The graph at the top, the word was is in green. So the thought of having the table be the inverse is that you probably want to dive into the cases where it was not recorded. So that table there is more of a case list that will give you the attending, case number, and MRN if you want to dig into those cases and try to work on some QI projects to increase that documentation. All right, next slide. Okay, so this is the start of our sampled asthma report. So this first one, I think Michelle and Andy talked a little bit about earlier. So this is a new initiative, but only pediatric EDs will be graded on this in 2022, but all of you will have access to this dashboard in Tableau. So at the top, we're showing the percent of cases where steroid treatment was received within 60 minutes of ED arrival. And then at the bottom, there's kind of an outline of a table, and you'll be able to see more information when you log in. So you'll see your facility name, and then rows for percentage, numerator and denominator, and then all of the numbers that correspond to those applicable months. Right. Next slide. Okay, so the steroid box plot, it's the same exact data that we saw in the slide before, it's just displayed in a different way. So the idea here is at the top, it will give you kind of a quartile breakdown, so you can see your minimum and maximum time, maybe that ranges from 1 to 1,000 minutes, and then you can see your quartile breakdown there over time with the months. Then at the bottom, we have a box plot to try to give you guys an idea of the spread over time. So at the x-axis are all of the different months, and then on the y-axis are the minutes. All right, next slide. Okay, so again, stemming from the other two slides that we just looked at, this is a case list looking at steroid treatment within 60 minutes of ED arrival. If you take a look at the very bottom right there, you can see it says steroid treatment numerator for the filter. So you can filter on yes, no, or all. And if you want to filter on no, that will give you the list of cases where the steroid was not given within 60 minutes. So the idea is that there might be a QI opportunity there. Yeah. Next slide. Okay, so these next two are labeled admit without treatment dashboard. And so the idea, if we kind of look at the top right, to get a better idea of what census patients are falling into this measure, we're looking at, was the patient discharged? No. And did the patient receive at least 1 steroid and 3 bronchodilators prior to hospitalization? No. And so if both of those are no, then the patients will appear in this data below. By hospitalization here, we're meaning a variety of terms such as admitted, they went to OBS, they were transferred, etc. So that graph over time will show you if they were hospitalized without the treatment of 1 steroid plus 3 bronchodilators. And then below that, we'll show you the table, which will have more information when you log in, their facility name, percentage, numerator and denominator, and those numbers over time. All right, next slide. Okay, so stemming off the graph and table we just looked at, this is the case list for that measure. So when you log in, more information will be populated here with the case numbers and MRNs. Off to the bottom right, you can see another numerator filter. So again, you can filter on yes, no, or all. If you filter on yes for this list, that will give you the list of patients where the patient was hospitalized without that prior treatment of 1 steroid and 3 bronchodilators, with the idea that there may be a QI opportunity there for you to dive into. All right, next slide. So the last two we're going to look at are for chest pain. The first one is looking at heart score documentation in the EMR. And this report is set up very similar to how the GCS report looks for head injury. So at the top, we show sample chest pain cases, the percentage of heart score recorded from the EMR over time. And then the table below is the inverse of that. So if the heart score was not recorded, the case will display there with the case number, MRN, attending, etc. All right, next slide. All right, so the final report we'll look at today is for intended disposition for sample chest pain. So when you log into this one, you'll see a stacked bar graph with the color legend off to the right. And then further to the right of that, we enlarged one of the filters because we wanted to point out that when you first click into this graph, it's going to default to uncheck that box for discharge from the ED, because we figured those are not the cases that you're interested in. You're probably interested in the cases that were admitted, transferred, went to OBS, etc. All right, next slide. So thanks for sticking with me through all of that. Before we jump into questions, we did just want to provide a small disclaimer about the Tableau report. So we're really excited about all of the new reports and features that went into production last week with Tableau, but we've run into a few bumps along the road. So we're working with Arbor Research to resolve those as quickly as possible. And so while you might be itching to jump into the reports now that you've seen them all, we recommend that you wait until mid to late next week until we're sure that all of the data is displaying correctly for you. So thank you so much for your patience with all of that. Feel free to put your questions in the Q&A or submit them through Zendesk, and we'll work to answer them for you. Thanks.
Alyson, I do have a couple of questions for you here really quickly. One, if I have new ideas for reports or changes to existing ones, where can I send those ideas?
Good question. Yeah, definitely if you guys are playing around with this and you see things that you think could be improved or have ideas for new reports, feel free to reach out. You can put questions in Zendesk or email any of us, and we'll work to pull all of those and figure out what is possible.
And then one more, is there an easy way to send these reports to the physicians at my site?
Sure, so there's 2 avenues that can be used here. Any attending physician can log in to get their own access to view their Tableau reports. Another option, if you have physicians that are not so likely to do that, there are a few buttons within Tableau that we haven't explored too much with, but I'm sure some of you have clicked around into them. You can set up alerts, you can subscribe, you can get the reports emailed to you on a monthly basis. So you can also probably set up some subscriptions to reports for your providers that just automatically go to their inbox once a month with certain metrics, whether they're focused on PE or head injury or all the different initiatives.